A federal judge just blocked a West Virginia ban on transgender student athletes. So there was a law out of West Virginia that came out, was signed into law by the governor, saying no transgender student athletes, right? You can't sort of cross the streams a little bit, to use a, what is that movie? Ghostbusters reference, right? We're not going to mix and mingle. West Virginia decided on that. Their legislature passed it. Governor Jim Justice signed it into law. Today, a federal judge said, nope, that law is unconstitutional. It violates our Constitution for a couple different reasons, of which we're going to talk about today. We'll jump off with a headline here from Washington Examiner. Says that a federal judge, you can see this article posted by Kayleen Deese today, July 22nd, says a federal judge blocked a law in West Virginia that banned transgender girls from participating in female teams. Okay, so we got to be clear what we're talking about. And I want to be very cautious on these segments, right? These segments can get very volatile. The language here can be troubling, and so I want to remember we're talking about kids in these situations, right? We're talking about student athletes. We're talking about people who are still trying to figure out the world, and they don't really know, what's going on. They want to play sports. They probably have parents who are pulling them all different directions. They're in the middle of this public debate about transgender rights that has become so politicized, where we have all these people on both sides just waging this war, and we're oftentimes I think forgetting about the kids who are in the middle of this whole thing. So when I go through these stories, I just want to remember that we have these conversations with some compassion. We're analyzing it from a legal perspective and trying to understand what's happening here. On this issue, I really don't have a strong dog in the fight either way. So let's go through it, and we'll jump back into it. It says, the judge ruled on Wednesday that the Mountain State cannot block transgender girls, so this would be boys who are transitioning into biological males transitioning into female, playing on female sports teams. Okay, so born biologically male, playing on female sports teams. So, and this is the more problematic transition, right? Many female sports teams and female athletes are concerned that you might have somebody who is sort of, born and raised with some of the male benefits in terms of physicality, right? Denser bones, bigger body structures, more muscle mass, things like that. And so if you pick a person like that and bring them over and put them on a female team, they may have some biological advantages. So there's been a response to that, saying we got to protect women's sports, we got to protect girls' sports, because we don't want the playing field to be uneven. So West Virginia made that decision. They signed that into law. They said this is a problem for us, and we're going to take some action. So it was initially banned. They were not allowed to participate in public school sports consistent with their gender identity, right? So that's the problem. The ruling marks the third federal court decision in the past 30 days to block anti-transgender laws from going into effect. Judge said, at this point, I have been provided with scant evidence that this law addresses any problem at all, let alone an important problem. And so this is an important point I want to make, right? We're going to go through this case. This judge we're going to learn about him a little bit. But this has always been my perspective on this, at least right now, kind of early on into this issue unfolding. My question was always, how common is this, right? How commonplace is this? Are we seeing this frequently on a regular basis, that we have to start responding already, right? In other words, can these things be dealt with locally? If we have a situation like this in a school, can the school work through that? Can the school just say, all right, look, let's bring everybody together. Hey, young gals here, we have this person who used to was born biologically male. They're now female. What do you think about bringing them on the team? Can you have that conversation with these young people and maybe make something like this work? Or do we have to go to the courts? Do we have to bring in the federal government, the local government? We're in federal court right now. Do we need a national policy to solve all of this? Is this bursting at the seams? Are there, busloads of transgender children who don't get to play sports and they're having, a catastrophe somewhere? I don't know. I really don't know what the scope of this thing is, but the judge is sort of saying that, right? I've made this argument before historically, and the judge is saying that. He's basically saying, look, it sounds like you're just passing a law to fix a problem that hasn't even been identified, really. So we'll see. Now, I'm less interested in that more so than I'm more interested in the underlying framework of this legal problem that we have, this conversation that's taking place, because this is not something that's foreign to our constitutional system of law. We've had different classifications of people. So this is the problem here. We have people And when we're analyzing their situation in context of the law, we have to apply different frameworks for that analysis. So back during the civil rights era, right, at some point, African Americans were treated differently. And we went through a system whereby we said, okay, we can't categorize people based on their race. We can't put all people into a bucket and call them African Americans and then treat them differently. That violates the Equal Protection Clause. It's not allowed. We passed, the civil rights laws, 13, 14, 15 amendments, and we changed the structure of how that was going to be interpreted. But we still have a framework where we have intermediate scrutiny, we have strict scrutiny, and we have rational basis analysis. These are the different frameworks that the courts use to analyze that. So right now we have a new bucket, okay? We're not talking about African Americans or minorities or sexual orientation or any of those, religious persecution or any of those things. We're talking about transgender rights as it relates to sports in high schools. So we have a new bucket, and we got to figure out how to analyze that. And so the court is going to give us some guidance on it. We're going to take a look at it. Before we see what's going on in the case, ACLU represented the young gal now. A federal district court judge just blocked the government from enforcing a cruel and unconstitutional law that would have prevented our client Becky from participating in school sports this year. The ACLU says Becky is an amazing kid who deserves the same opportunities as every girl her age. She has a lot of people in her corner in the battle, including many others. So many West Virginians as well. The judge who signed off on this is named Judge Goodwin, U.S. District Court Judge, so he's in federal court. And you're going to see that what he did is he granted the plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction. What that means is the ACLU was filing a lawsuit on behalf of Becky. They were suing the West Virginia State Board of Education, and so they're asking for this preliminary injunction. They're saying, court, we want you to do something. Specifically, we want you to stop that law from coming into effect. It's going to ban Becky's ability to play on the sports team. It has to go. So the judge granted it. The judge said, yep, it's granted. The defendants here, the school, are enjoined from enforcing the law. She's going to be permitted to sign up and participate in school athletics in the same way as her girl classmates, right? Signed off on here by Judge Goodwin. Let's see who he is. He is appointed by Bill Clinton, been in office for a long time, since 1995. You can see born in 1942, 78 years old, over in West Virginia. He is somebody who, was an attorney. He was a city court judge until 73, then practiced law in West Virginia. Nominated by Clinton for the U.S. District Court in Virginia, confirmed by the Senate, served as a chief judge for a bit. He rejected prosecutors' plea deals because he found that holding an open jury trial of an accused fentanyl dealer would be in the public interest. Okay, so that's interesting. His son was also appointed. His daughter-in-law is the mayor of Charleston, so the family's all over the place in government. West Virginia, prior to election, she was a spokesman. Goodwin's nephew is a former U.S. senator as well. So the whole family's in government. We've got two people who are judges. We've got mayor of Charleston and a former U.S. senator. Oh. So that's a very active family there, isn't it? So we now know who Judge Goodwin is. Let's take a look at his opinion. As I mentioned, it's BPJ. So this is going to be Becky and the other initials of this individual, along with other people, filed in the Southern District of West Virginia. And this is the memorandum. So let's go through it. We're not going to read the whole thing. It's 20, let me see how long this, 15 pages, but I just clipped out some of the good stuff. Let's see what's going on. So it gives us a memo. Here's the introduction. It says, a fear of the unknown and discomfort with the unfamiliar have motivated many harms in our country. Out of fear of those less than them, people who could work jobs, work certain schools, all of that stuff. Recognizing that classifying human beings in a way that harms them is antithetical to democracy. So this whole thing is going to be about the equal protection of the laws. The matter before me today is a motion to stop that law. Those states and standing in opposition are going to exclude people. At this point, I have been provided with scant evidence that this addresses any problem, let alone an important problem. When the government distinguishes between different groups of people, they must be supported by compelling reasons. Saying we have a bucket of Americans. If you're going to start taking people out of that bucket of Americans and organizing them differently, well, then you better have a compelling reason to do that. And so we're going to see that this judge doesn't think that there is a compelling reason to do that. And he's been joined by two other judges, two other defendants, other defendant governments have also lost on these issues. Having determined that the plaintiff, Becky here, would be successful, they're going to grant the injunction. So who is BPJ and Becky and what's going on here? She's 11 years old. She's going into the 6th grade at a new school. Like many of her peers, she wants to play sports. She hopes to join other girls in cross country and track teams. Okay, so we're talking about running now. However, she was informed by the school that because of the new statute, she can't do it because she's a transgender girl. We've got different terms here. The judge looks like that they went through and researched terms like gender identity and gender dysphoria and took the term that came out of a case of Grimm versus Gloucester County. It says transgender is an umbrella term that describes a group of people who transcend conventional expectations of gender identity or expression. All right, so that's the definition. We have Becky. She writes in depth about her history. She revealed publicly private details to educate everybody. She was assigned the sex of male at birth, knew from a young age she is a girl. By the 3rd grade, she was living as a girl, but dressing as a boy at school. By then, she changed her name, commonly associated with other girls, to Becky. Also joined her elementary school's all-girl cheerleading team, practiced and competed with this team without incident. BPG was, okay, so that's my point on that, right? That's my point right there. This whole thing sounded like it was working itself out. Already joined the cheerleading team, already practiced and competed with the team. No incident at all. Because the school figured it out. They just figured it out. And our government, and in this case, it was the Republicans who came out and said, oh, we gotta stop this from happening. This is a culture war. We got to get out there and wage a war on this thing. So they did that. And now, because there's a law in place, the school has their hands tied. Becky goes to sign up for a class, and they can't. She can't do that anymore. She has to say, oh, well, the school has no choice. There's a law now that addresses this. So we're not allowed to solve this on our own. We got to do what the government says, and this whole thing works its way up. Now we're in court because the government got involved. There are always unintended consequences. Even if we're talking about social, cultural battles, there are always unintended consequences, which is why when the Republicans are going hog wild and going crazy, passing stuff all over the place, I'm saying, listen, folks, this is going to come back the other way, right? If the government is able to come in and start dictating how local schools start doing things, it's going to go the other way, right? How can you be against? Anyways, let's go. Let's carry on because I've got a lot more to get through. BPG was diagnosed with gender dysphoria in 2019. She began puberty delaying treatment to treat the condition. Now, look. That's a whole separate conversation, right? That's a whole separate conversation about, we're not talking about that here. But all right, so prevents endogenous puberty and therefore any physiological changes that are caused by the increase of testosterone circulation. So gender dysphoria 2019, 2020, she started that. So basically the argument is that she's going to be stopped from developing physiological advantages over other girl athletes. Right? How old was she? 2019. When was she born is the question. So she's 11 years old. So she probably started that at 9 or 10, maybe 10 years old, started the testosterone preventative treatment. At 9 or 10, are you already getting some of those benefits? I don't know. BPG and her mom filed a lawsuit suing West Virginia. State of West Virginia got involved, and now the government's going to sort this out. So in her complaint, they allege that the school deprived her of equal protection. She wants a declaratory judgment saying it violates Equal Protection Clause and Title IX. She wants the law not to go into place. She wants nominal damages and attorney's fees. All right, so I want to go through this again. This is the equal protection claim. And remember, under the equal protection claim, the idea is that one group of people are being treated differently than another group of people. We have laws that are supposed to protect everybody, but one single group is being treated improperly. That's what this judge is claiming, and he's going to give us some guidelines on how he's going to come to that conclusion. He says that the law says all persons in similarly situated situations should be treated alike. Okay? Plaintiff now says that the law discriminates against transgender girls and only transgender girls because cisgender boys and cisgender girls and transgender boys are all unaffected by the law's central tenets. Non-cisgender girls may not participate on a girls' sports team. State responded, said the law does not treat transgender girls differently than other groups. The law is premised on biological sex. It treats all biological males similarly, prohibiting them from participating on girls' sports teams. Right? So it's the state saying, no, it goes both ways. It's not just singling out biologically born or assigned, whatever language you want to use, males. It's not taking them and treating them differently from biologically assigned females who want to transition to male. It's equal across the board is what the government is saying. Now, practically what the plaintiff is saying, Becky is saying, is no, it's still problematic one direction, because that's the only direction where you're going to have the biological advantage. So that's the difference. She's saying there really is no good reason to put us in a separate bucket. All right, moving on. It says the equal protection claim is essentially the state is saying that it's not being violated. It's not a violation of equal protection. Biological males are defined differently under West Virginia Code. Let's see what else, if there's anything else good in here. The question then is, what level of scrutiny applies? So remember, we talked about this. When we have a law and the law impacts a bucket of people, the court has to say, well, we have to determine how to measure that law. How do we determine whether it's valid or not? Here, what they're going to do is they're going to use what's called intermediate scrutiny. It's sort of in the middle, right? At the top, we have what's called strict scrutiny. That means that if the government's going to uphold that law, it absolutely better be necessary. There better be nothing else you can do to achieve the government's goals. We have the lowest level, which is what's called rational basis review, which means that as long as the government has a rational basis for the law, it doesn't really matter what it does, because it doesn't impact your constitutional rights. That's like a speeding law, right? Put the speed limit whatever you want, because driving is a privilege, not a right. In this case, they're using one in the middle. So it's not the strictest. It's not that the government has to really meet a high burden, and it's not the lowest. It's in the middle. They're going to go over to the Fourth Circuit, and they're going to apply intermediate scrutiny. They call this heightened scrutiny. And this is scrutiny to laws that classify people according to transgender status. So transgender status is going to get that middle level review. Because it's based in sex, the level of scrutiny is applicable to sex discrimination. And so that's where we're operating. So then to survive that, so if we're going to apply that strict standard, sort of kind of in the middle there, what does the government have to show? It's exceedingly persuasive justification for the classification that was created by the law. So if the government is going to take the transgender students out of that bucket, the group bucket, and make their own bucket, according to the law, it says that it must be exceedingly persuasive justification for doing that. The classification must serve important government objectives, and that discrimination means that employed are substantially related to achievement of those objectives. So if the government's going to really hold to this law, they got to identify very, very important government objectives. Why are you doing this? They got to be important, not just because you want it to be that way. What are they? And then those objectives have to be related to the mechanism of the law. Is the law going to actually achieve those outcomes or not? So the court goes through this, and it just basically says, no, given that analysis, no, we balance all the equities, and here's what we've got. The public interests and the balance of the equities show that the preliminary injunction must be granted. In evaluating the balance of the equities, the courts balance the competing claims of injury, and they consider the effect on each party. It is always in the public interest to uphold constitutional rights, so they're going to default to that end. They say, this is the last paragraph here, it says, it is clearly in the public interest to uphold Becky's constitutional right not to be treated any differently than her similarly situated peers, because any harm to her personal rights is a harm to the share of American rights that we all hold collectively. Well, that's curious, isn't it? The right not to be discriminated against by the government belongs all of us in equal measure. It is that communal and shared ownership of freedom that makes up the American ideal. The American ideal is one that has never been yet and yet must be the land where every man is free. Let America be America again. Langston Hughes, he signed off on this. Granted, right? And so the response, of course, is, well, what about the rights of the other girls out there, right? What about women's sports? We've seen this before. We've seen this in different contexts. There was the male to female UFC fighter who almost killed a woman. I mean, it was not fair at all. We've seen many different stories throughout the internet of male to female transgender individuals crushing all of the other women in the sport, right? Winning competitions as powerlifters, winning races as sprinters, and the list goes on and on. We've seen pictures of this where they're on a podium and you have somebody who looks like they're like 6'4" who just dunked on 5'3" women. And he's up there on the first place trophy. Hey, I won. Hey, it's great. And everybody's looking at this going, this doesn't seem right. What are we talking about here? Right? And that's sort of a different story. This is an 8-year-old girl, 9, 10-year-old girl. This is a local school. The government's getting involved. Again, so So West Virginia, they went out and they said, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to make sure that we're protecting our culture, which I support local communities doing that. So they went and passed this law. And what this law is ultimately, the ultimate consequence of that is any future law that West Virginia wants to pass that mirrors this is also going to be deemed unconstitutional unless this is reversed when it goes up on to a court of appeals or hits the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court might actually weigh in and tell us what level of scrutiny to apply. So we'll see where that goes. And it is time to hop into the chat and see what you have to say about this. So let's take a look over at, we got some super chats that came in, and let's see here. We've got several of these. Wow, we got a lot of them. Okay, so let me get through some of these and then we'll hop over to local. Wait, let me see what I've got open here. Let me get my bearing straight, because I just opened up the other link to the question that we had previously in the previous segment, and that kind of screwed up my links, but that's my fault, not yours. All right, so here we go. Let's see what we've got from watchingthewatchers.locals.com in over here. All right, Super Iron Bob is in the house. Says, in the current environment, especially with civil rights, there is no opportunity for local or legislative solutions. All decision-making has been made into policy to be made by the courts. Wherever there is a decision by local communities and legislatures, a single litigant who can find a sympathetic judge gets to set policy for everyone. No one gets to negotiate on this anymore. We've been able to have these discussions, but the law and the courts won't allow it. Right. It's a good point. Right now, West Virginia has sort of, there's nothing they can do because a federal judge has just said, oh, this is the policy. I know you voted on it, but this is the policy because I'm a judge and this is the Constitution. So there's a lot of criticisms going, both ways on that. Let's see. Let's jump over to YouTube. We got some super chats coming in. We had Pro Player said just nothing there, just a 99-cent on that. Thank you for that. Ramalam gave me another $10 over there for a super chat. Thank you. Jay super chatted, said your new studio works for me. Thank you for that. So it's a work in progress. I've got a lot more work to do on all the back end. Today was super busy. I smashed my stinking thumb, and so I'm going to get to it on the weekend. No question about that. Thank you for that, Jay. Really appreciate the support. We also have Angela B. says, so excited to enter my son into the Westminster Dog Show. He identifies as a corgi and has dreamed for years of winning Best in Show, and that was over from Angela B. So thank you for that also, Angela B. Let's see. Let's go back on over to, we got some more coming in from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Three Girlies is here, says girls are having more than just a concern. This is great because Three Girlies, of course, has two girlies. She's the third, I think. It's actually messing with women's sports. There are teenage girls who are currently having issues with this. It's messing with their scholarship, girls' track records, and their potential to go farther in the sport. There are currently lawsuits going on from female athletes in regards to the issue. The only solution is to make a third category. Women fought really hard to have their own category so that they were not having to compete against biological males. Transgender, male to female or female to male, should have their own sports category to make it fair. Biological males, no matter how far out they are from transition, are still at an advantage over biological females. You cannot change one's DNA. It's not fair for biological males to compete against biological females. That's from Three Girlies. And as a former athlete myself, I will acknowledge that, right? And I've never transitioned, obviously, but I've definitely wrestled. When I was in high school, I was a wrestler and mixed martial artist, and I've definitely, competed against females, and it's an entirely different class. I wrestled one of the top rated females in the country, and I was a terrible wrestler early on, and I beat her. Right, I think she was ranked like 5 nationally. It's a different thing because we have different physiology, and I was just a high school guy at that time. So there are a lot of complexities here. Three Girlies. I think that's a great perspective, and I think that sports are a big part of a young person's upbringing, and if you start to sort of take that away from them, that's a big problem. There's some serious consequences from that, no question about that. Let's take another one over here. We've got Sharon Quidney says, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when all these athletic winners are biological males. It's a good point that it probably isn't that prevalent right now, but it looks to me like a way for relatively non-athletic guys to get themselves into some primo scholarships to first-rate universities for girls' sports. And look, you don't want to be the person to come out and say that somebody might be exploiting this, might be using this to fill a void in themselves. but people do that, right? People do that pretty regularly. People join causes and they make decisions based on peer pressure, on what your parents want from you. And so there's a lot of questions about what this conversation itself is even doing to children, right? If you have an 8-year-old and you say, hey, are you Johnny or are you Sally? You get to decide. What is that? Is that a fair thing to be asking of an 8-year-old? I don't have kids, but it doesn't feel like that. Anyways, let's see what else we've got. Peely Wally says the world of sport on the whole should have been strong and said no to transgender athletes competing against athletes that were born opposite sex to them. The fear of aggregating the woke community shouldn't come into it. Some would even go as far as to say that in many transgender cases is a form of mental illness. And I think it was for a time, right? It was in the DSM-5 as gender identity dysphoria or something like that. And then they removed it from the DSM-5, saying that it's no longer a form of mental, it's not a clinical issue, right? This is just how you are now. So again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not trying to, be pejorative here. I understand these are people, these are human beings. And so we want to have some compassion when we're dealing with it. We're all trying to figure our lives out and nobody has it dialed in just perfectly. So we want to have a little bit of compassion on these things. John, even if you can agree with it, you can disagree with it. You can be, very aggressive in your disagreement because you want to protect the other side of the argument. I understand that totally. I'm talking about being compassionate to the 10-year-olds who are going through this because they are in something for sure. John Halgren is here, says just let her compete on the male team. Or did she not want to do that? She already had the benefit of male development when she crushes girls' records or wins competitions that a biological girl would have won. Who's looking out for that girl? The ones who never stand a chance competing against girls. It's a good point. Right? It's a good point. If your daughter is the star athlete and then suddenly not because of something that might be perceived as an unfair advantage, you can see how that might be problematic in a very competitive environment. All right, we've got a few more. It's Ed says, Rob, sorry about your finger, buddy. Thanks, man. I know it's a pain. We already are seeing trans women and girls completely obliterate cisgender women in sports. It's just not fair. Trans women are breaking every record set by women in their respective leagues. Karsten Brasch, ranked 203 in the tennis league, beat both Williams sisters in tennis. This occurred while Serena was ranked number 1. The number 203 ranked male player beat the top female tennis player of score 6-2. Yeah. By the way, men are currently participating on cheerleading teams with women. Based on your logic, that doesn't resolve the problem. If leagues are currently separated between male and female, it should remain as such. Otherwise, it negatively affects women. If the league are co-ed, then it's a fair game for everyone. That's from It's Ed. That's great. That's a great comment, It's Ed. That's a great comment, right? I mean, thank you for that. It's very good. I appreciate that. I think you're onto something, right? And you gave us some very good data and facts. 203. And it's a great comment. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And that's great. Okay, so let's go on over. Let's see. We had some other comments come in. We have Super Iron Bob gave us a super chat over here on YouTube. Says that cheerleading teams aren't gendered. Yeah. And I think did I just hit both of your comments simultaneously? No, that was It's Ed. Okay. Thank you for that, Super Iron Bob. Yeah, right. There are ways I think that you can sort of navigate through some of this. Philip Paggi said, where is the father? So that is a great question. And obviously, not there, right? Didn't make it into the article. We also have another one from Ravich is in the house and says, Robert, huge fan of your content, but my question is, why don't they just make their own group or league specifically for transgenders instead of forcing their way in through boys and girls teams? Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that is exactly what It's Ed was talking about, sort of asking that. Why would this be, I think the answer is because what you're sort of implying is separate but equal, right? It's that same thing that we went through a pre-civil rights era. They're saying, but I'm not my own category. I am actually a female. Biologically, that's inaccurate as far as I can tell, right? But that's how this is how this is being framed legally. Okay, so we also have another one here from Shade. Says, when's the last time a child could file a case? Is this a real thing? I could be misinterpreting this, but it seems that to read that it's only her filing. Am I understanding this correctly? Is this juvie court? No, I don't. Let me see if I can pull that back up. No, that was the federal district court out of West Virginia, which is where this court was. This was a judge. This is a federal district court. Yeah, I know. All right. Leafy Bug is here, says, I'm not a cisgendered man. I'm a man. My kids are not cisgender girls and boys. They are girls and boys. People can call themselves whatever they want, but they don't get to redefine who I am or who my children are. Leafy Bug is in the house. We also have, I think we saw Ravitch joined up over there. We have Angela B says, with transgenders being 50% male and 50% female, why are 0% of biological males losing opportunities to transgender females? Why are losing opportunities to transgender females? Yeah, okay, so I see what you're saying, right? So the equation is not sort of equitable, right? Only female athletes are losing out on opportunities because of the transition. Biological males are not losing opportunities because biological females transitioning over to male, are not taking away their opportunities, right? The biologically gendered males, this is a difficult conversation to have. What the heck? My tongue's getting all tied up over here. Ugh. All right. The biological males are not going to lose opportunities to biologically born females transitioning to males because they still have that biological advantage. So you're not going to have somebody who comes across and becomes a superstar on the sports team, I think is the point, which is a very good point. Thank you for that, Angela B. A few more over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. John Halgren's in the house says, yes, the rights of women just died because this judge just strangled the Equal Protection Clause. Yeah, we've got Woke Lawyer says, I can't wait for all the January 6th defendants to plead transgender. That's from the Woke Lawyer Panda. Farmer's Daughter 4 is in the house says, I think we got the Hunter got the expression for real. Oh, that was from the Biden town hall earlier segment. Good to see you, Farmer's Daughter. Nadarb is here, says, you know what? I'm getting real sick of these federal judges sticking their nose where it doesn't belong. What happened to the 10th Amendment? Is that not a thing anymore? The powers not delegated to the U.S. by the Constitution are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. Yeah, so they sued in federal court on a federal claim. Federal courts got involved, and they're going to override what the people of West Virginia voted and signed into law. Don't you like that? We have that one Florida man is here, says, testosterone plays a part in human development in utero. So, yes, testosterone has already played a part in the prepubescent children, which is basically what I would speculate, right? Unless that biologically born, male, he's still even if his testosterone levels are depressed, he's still going to evolve with some genetic benefits that are accompanied with being a man in terms of sports performance, right? I'm not. What do they call him? A chauvinist. Chauvinist. Oh, wow, gosh. All right. Thunder 7 says, Rob, it's not about fairness anymore. Biological men are identifying as female and winning and getting the grants and scholarships. Ban all biological males from women's sports, he says. Sexual offenders are free reign, to go around in there, Thunder 7. Yeah, I see what you're going with that. The judge said you can't do that. We'll see if there's a response from the Court of Appeals. Ghost Gunner said, this is sad for the women who actually want to compete in a fair environment. When a professional U.S. women's soccer team loses to a high school varsity team, not hard to predict what's going to happen. The best thing an average male athlete can do, identify as a woman, go out there, crush the competition, and see what their response looks like, right? This could be a problem that solves itself. If there is a flood of transgender, transitioned athletes, and the female sports basically become transgender male sports, you might just see, women just want to bail out of sports, or, a real strong call for some changes there. It's Ed says, if a trans woman gets tested for controlled substance, will they test positive for testosterone? Yeah, I believe so, right? Because they're actually supplementing with testosterone. So they would certainly see that. Joe Biden's here. Joe Biden says, Rob, it's the thing, the thing. But I said that clearly. It would have taken Joe Biden, if he was speaking, about 25 minutes to say that. Gail08 says, can't we just write the laws better? XXs play on XX team, XYs play on XY team. If your birth chromosomes are other than XY or XX, too bad. No competitive sports divided by gender for you. Join the shooting team. I like that, right? Shooting or the chess club or, the debate team, one of those things. Not something that requires physiological differences. Robute is here, says, Want to see the judge react when Francis somebody is identifying as trans and sending women into orbit with every punch. Oh yeah, so that was the UFC person. Want to see how they react, and would they win gold medals in mental gymnastics? That's over from Robute over there. Yeah, I think that was the UFC fighter who was just out there just crushing people. Okay, so those were great questions and comments over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Love them all, and thank you everybody for your super chats and your support over there on YouTube. Looking at you, Super Iron Bob, Philip Paggi, Ravitch is in the house, Angela B, Ramillion, and many others. I appreciate all of you, including Jay and Pro Player 2000. So thank you for all of that, and if you want to be a part of the community, it's at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona, things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing, but you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.